Airtable has a new program called AI Labs. It gives you early access to new AI features, and this rolled out at the end of last month. The first AI feature to roll out from this Labs program is the ability to take information from a PDF, an attachment that you have inside of Airtable, and be able to extract and summarize information about that document. Now, if you've enabled Airtable AI for your organization and you are an administrator, you probably received an email like this around June 24th, giving you an idea of how AI Lab works and talking a little bit about this new feature. Some use cases it gives are being able to create summaries from financial documents, digitizing key pieces of data from PDF forms, and then translating text from a document into another language. Hi, I'm Dan Lehman from AutomationHelpers.com, and we help companies like yours get automated using best-of-breed tools. For today's use case, we're going to be talking about an applicant tracking system, and we're going to take information that was submitted to us from different applicants who are applying to jobs at our company. As part of this, we've asked them to submit their resume as an attachment, and we're going to take information from that resume to save us some time to be able to identify who might be some of the standout candidates. Now, to make sure we have this feature enabled, I'm in my admin panel and I'm clicking on settings, and it defaults to security and compliance. We're going to click over on integrations and development. Here you'll see this option if you've enabled Airtable AI to get early access to new AI features. You'll want to make sure that this is toggled to on. By default, it's listed as off, but if you want this new feature, you'll need to toggle that on. Now, the other part I'd recommend checking out is your AI credit usage, which tabulates over here. I don't find this particularly useful because as I actually tested out this feature, it burned through some of the test credits really, really quickly. So you'll want to make sure to keep an eye on how much you're consuming as you're enabling different features. And just a reminder to those of you out there, if this is getting pretty expensive based on Airtable AI's pricing, there's lots of other ways to be able to do this by going to ChatGPT directly as an example. Most of what Airtable AI is doing, for example, is putting this really nice wrapper around ChatGPT to be able to interact with Airtable data, but that's not the only way you can do this. So if you're a little bit on the fence about Airtable AI, and maybe you already pay for OpenAI API access, there's different ways you can do this. To make sure this is easy for you to be able to follow along at home, I just use a template that Airtable has out of the box. So I'm going to Templates, and then from here we can search for Application and click on Simple Applicant Tracker. You can check out the template itself and then click on Try this template. Once you've installed this base in your workspace, you can check out there's 3 different tables. We have Applicants. These are the people who are actually submitting via the form. We've got Positions. These are the different roles that we've opened up in our companies. And we have Interviewers, but we're really not going to use Interviewers for this example. Now, for positions, you can see that we've got a description, required experience, and then who's applying for these positions. This is linked to our applicants table. And in the required experience, this is where we want to compare what we've actually put for required experience against what they've put in their resume. Now, if we click back into the applicants table, we can see we've got their resume. That's great. We've got that. Now, by default, I believe they called this attachment, and I just relabeled this to resume. I also took out the little cheesy images of them dressed up as mascots so that we have just a field dedicated for people to upload their resume. The first field that you're going to want to add is a lookup field, which is going to look up to our positions table. So here you can see I've already done this. If I edit this field, what you can see is I chose a lookup field, and then we're looking at the applying for linked record. And then from there, we're pulling the required experience field. And so when we save that, that should now pull this information that's coming from over on the positions table, depending on which of those positions a person is applying for. The next thing we want to do is to be able to add an AI-generated text field. We can click the plus button up at the top. In order to do this, we've got a couple different options. One, we can click on long text directly, and from here we can toggle on the option to generate text, and then we choose start from scratch. Now, the other option that we can do is we can press the plus button here, and instead we can just click on AI and then choose the option here to generate text. This takes you to the same place either way, so it's really just what's more intuitive for you. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to test here is the ability just to generate a number. How well are we saying this is a match from a score of 1 to 10? How good of a fit are they based on our description that we've given for their experience? So here I've typed in a description. Your job's to evaluate this job candidate to see how well their resume matches their required experience for the position. Please only return a numeric value from 1 to 10, with 10 being a perfect fit. And then it's also really important to say, do not return any explanation aside from the numeric value. Because if you just wanted to have a number 1 through 10, it's always going to try to include extra information about why it chose that number and give some extra details or punctuation marks or things like that. So if you want it just to be a number, you're going to give it some additional information to make sure it only returns that. And then at the end, this is where we're saying, here's the required experience, and we're pulling in the required experience field. Now to get that, you can simply press this plus button and you can show which field you want it to actually insert dynamically as it's generating this explanation. And then we're also doing it for the candidate's resume. Now, what's important about this, as you're putting in their resume field, notice that this is tagged with AI Labs. If you have not yet gone in and toggled on that option for AI Labs, you're not going to see this field at all. You could have multiple different attachment fields, but none of them are actually going to show as an available option for a field that you can choose from. That's why it's important that you toggle that on before you actually do this step. So at this point, you'll have this experience score and you can click to actually generate that numeric value. Now, a couple quick changes I made in case you're getting different values from me. Right away, the options that are actually here, this data came out of the box from Airtable, and these were uploaded as docx as opposed to PDFs. So I went and just converted these to PDFs and then uploaded the same versions of it so that it could actually extract that information. Airtable does mention that they'll be supporting different file types in the future, but for right now, it's only PDF. The other change I made is these are really silly roles, lead mascot and concessions mascot, and the resumes actually reference being a mascot. So because these were all such a close match, I actually took a totally different resume and uploaded it for Rin's resume here, just so that we could see some contrast in the scores that actually appear. So those are the main changes that I made. I just put a different resume here, and all three of these are in PDF format. So now back to our AI field, we're able to generate values between 1 and 10. We've got one that's performing really poorly and one that's performing much better than that candidate. And one of the things I'd really like to be able to do is generate some categorization based on this. So you can see if we were actually doing the interviews ourselves as people, we'd probably have some buckets, and we've got a single select here, and we can say which bucket they fall into. And so I kind of want to yield that same result. And there's actually something really cool that we can do via formulas, where we can take the output of a formula and then turn that into essentially what functions as a single select. So here what I'm going to do, I actually duplicated this field, and we can edit this, and I really didn't change a whole lot here. Same idea, we're generating text, and now I'm just changing this description to say, hey, we want to evaluate them, but instead we're going to have great, good, okay, and poor. And this time, don't include any explanation. Again, only return those values, great, good, okay, or poor. Same idea, we give them the same exact fields as context to be able to run this. Well, now what if I want to actually make this appear as a single select? So we can do this by creating a new formula field, and we can select formula. And here we can simply type in category and reference that experience core category field. And let's go ahead and create that field for a second. And you can see this just renders the same text that we have. But we have one additional option in that field. If we go over to formatting, where we can say, change the formula output to single select options. This is also a new feature in Airtable. Let's toggle this on, and I'm just going to add these options in here. Now I've got my 4 options. Let's just change these colors. And as a default, we'll just leave it blank. We'll save that. And now you can see we actually render this value as a single select. And this is so cool because it's not just displaying it on the screen. If we wanted to add a filter and just look for our great candidates, we could easily do that. We do a filter, and we can say where that experience AI, this is now this filtered version, is, and now we just choose an option just like we would in a real single select. Okay, this is starting to feel a little bit better. We can create views for these candidates, but I'm never too trusting of the AI itself. I want it to give me an explanation of why it actually came up with that value. So some of you might be thinking, well, great, let's just make a new AI field, and we can say, hey, give me an explanation of why you chose this value. The problem here is twofold. One, this is 2 separate evaluations, so it's going to cost you more money to be able to actually run 2 separate operations, and they're not actually tied to each other. So potentially could evaluate this twice and come up with different reasons. It came up with an explanation that didn't exactly match the evaluation of which category it fit into in the first place. So instead, we're actually not going to use any of the fields that we've created so far. We're going to create yet another version of our AI field. I have all these versions just so you can see and compare them as we're working on it. And here we're giving a new description similar to the past ones. We're saying we want you to evaluate this, give it an answer of great, good, okay, or poor. And then after that evaluation, specifically put in this character, because we're going to use this to then separate out these 2 answers. So in this case, I'm saying put in a semicolon and then give a short explanation of why you assign that rating to the candidate. Then I give it an example just so they know exactly what this looks like, and then give them those same fields that it needs in order to be able to evaluate it. So from here, this is going to yield those results of poor, great, and great, and it's going to provide an explanation. We can expand to see that explanation of why they selected that answer. So now we want to create a formula field to extract just that first part of the information before the semicolon. Now you can do this just by looking in the video, and you can pause here and copy the information and be able to add it in. But honestly, if you've never tried the generate formula, this is really slick. And I say this as a consultant who works on tons of Airtable projects. This is still faster and easier to use a lot of the times than trying to do it myself. In this case, I just said, extract the text to the left of the first semicolon in the experience score raw field, and it gave me exactly what I needed. I didn't have to make any tweaks in order for this to work. So now this should yield that categorization, which of course we can add those colors in by going to the formatting and adding the colors as we want them. And now we're going to add in one more formula field. This is going to take what's to the right of the semicolon. So again, I could do this simply by saying formula field, extract the text to the right of the first semicolon in the experience score raw field. It's going to give me the information I need. And now I've got the separated out AI explanation, and I've got the categorization. And we did this just with it simply generating a single time, as opposed to having to do it multiple times, which is going to cost more money and be less accurate. And then in the end, we can simply hide or get rid of the fields that we no longer need. So I'm going to turn some of these off. All we need here to be able to display in the end is really that categorization, which renders as that single select, and then the explanation itself. And then you'd have one more field that's just going to live in the background, which is going to be the actual AI field, which this is all computed off of. But we don't need the user to see that, so we're just going to hide that as well. I hope this has been helpful to see Airtable AI's latest feature in action. If you have any questions about your own Airtable setup, don't hesitate to reach out to our website at automationhelpers.com, where we're offering free 30-minute consultations.